and I'm going to start the recording as a backup. And as usual, Debbie, just call myself if you have a problem.
Gotcha.
All right, you're good.
All right. Good evening, everybody. This is the Parks Committee for CB11. Today's date is November 9th, 2023. The time now is 7:10. In attendance, committee members currently here are myself, Deborah, Roger, Joe Thompson, Dwayne Williams, and Lisa Soto is remote. That's as far as the committee members. Yes, all right. I see we have Charisse from New Yorkers for Parks. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you. I'm Charisse Palomino. I am the Director of Advocacy and Programs at New Yorkers for Parks, and I have a presentation we're presenting because we were hoping to get the community boards, a letter of support from the community board. So I'm going to try to share my screen.
Go ahead. Are you able to?
Yes.
Okay, there you go.
So as I mentioned, I'm from New Yorkers for Parks. And if you don't know us, New Yorkers for Parks is the only independent citywide organization advocating for parks and open spaces in New York City. We do that through our advocacy work, through our research, and through our partnerships and community engagement work. We have a coalition called Playfair for Parks that has over 400 community groups and organizations. And we're one of the co-founders, the New York League of Conservation Voters and DC 37. The Parks Workers Union is also one of our co-founders for the Playfair Coalition. And so here's the list of all of our coalition members. And so as I mentioned before, we do research. And so earlier this year, we released a 1% impact report that talked about what would 1% of the city budget being allocated to the Parks Department mean for New York City. So once this presentation's over, I can send you a link to the report so you can review it. One of the other things we do is an open space profile. And so in 2020 is our most recent one. We did it by community boards, examining the number of parks, the amount of park space, to really assess the amount of park accessibility and amenities that each community has in New York City. But I'm here today for our campaign 1% for Parks. And so this is our largest advocacy campaign where we're championing 1% of the city budget to be allocated for the Parks Department. The city budget is currently $107 billion. And so to give you a little bit of history about the Parks budget, in the 70s, the Parks Department received over 1% of the city's annual operating budget until the fiscal crisis hit, which some of you may remember the fiscal crisis of the 70s. And so when that crisis happened, the city slashed the Parks Department's budget to just 0.5% of the city's operating budget. Today, the Parks Department, through a lot of advocacy and community organizations supporting our work and some really key council members really stepping up, the Parks Department's budget as 0.6. So it's about just over $600 million out of the $107 billion of the city budget. And since 1980, the Parks Department, as you can see, the budget for the Parks Department has only grown 72%, where the New York City's expense budget, the overall operating budget, has grown by 127%. And these are some of the other, major city agencies that have shown significant growth in their budget since 1980. And so the Parks Department continues to be grossly underfunded and under-resourced to support the needs of our communities. And in our 1% impact report, we did an analysis on New York City compared to other major cities. And most major cities are spending between 2 to 4% of their city's budget on their parks department. Whereas New York City, as I mentioned before, is spending 0.6%. And one thing that I want you to really pay attention to is the park area, the acreage, because oftentimes when people think about our cities, and that includes us, not just, tourists, we think of the skyscrapers of Manhattan, but New York has a lot of park space. It's 520 miles of waterfront park space. That is a lot, and the Parks Department manages 30% of that 520 miles of waterfront. So that's a lot of park area for the department to manage. So it's 30,000 acres of parkland that the Parks Department manages with just 6% of the operating budget. Out of all of the major cities in the United States, Los Angeles has 16,000 acres of parkland, and they're allocating 2.9%. So quadruple what New York City is allocating for the Parks Department, while we have almost double the parkland. What's also staggering is the disparity in our park staffing. As you can see, I'm sorry, let me go back to that slide. As you can see, from the 1960s, prior to the fiscal crisis to today, there's been a significant reduction in park workers, while the population of New York City continues to grow. So essentially what that is showing is that there's more park usership and less park workers to maintain our parks. New York City has one gardener for every 114 acres of parkland, while San Francisco and Chicago each have one gardener for every 18 acres. That's the disparity of not adequately funding our parks. We don't have the same maintenance and operations with our Parks Department. When it comes to rec center funding, and rec centers, as you know, are really important resources, particularly in the Bronx. There's been a dramatic decline in the funding for rec centers and in the funding for staffing the rec centers. So as you can see, prior to the fiscal crisis, how much money was allocated to supporting rec centers and how much staffing was used to have people working in the rec centers versus today. We like to use this statistic to show how underfunded the Parks Department is, because the New York City Police Department's overtime pay, just their overtime, not any of their operating budget, just their overtime, is higher than the entire Parks agency's budget. So last year we did a survey of our Playfair Coalition members and to talk about the current state of our parks. 85% of park stewards reported that they've seen an increase in parks usership since COVID, and that they've seen an increase in parks userships outside the traditional season, which is spring and summer. But more people are expressing safety concerns about the Parks Department because of the lack of staffing. There's not enough park staff, there's not the visibility of park staff. So it does create some feelings of some safety concerns. In the mayor's management report, they reported that there's been an increase in crimes in parks in the first 4 months of fiscal year 23. And so those are the last two bullet points, as you can see. So what would 1% of the Parks Department mean for us? It would mean that we would have a 21st century park system. It means that our parks can be clean and well maintained throughout the year, not just during busy season. It means our parks can be safe and there's more staff that can build relationships with community members. It means that there can be quicker repairs in our parks. We can avoid longer closures and make sure that there's accessibility to all areas of parks because of the ease in which we can get more repairs done. And it would also significantly improve the maintenance and operation of our natural areas and our trails, which are really critical to helping to manage stormwater and reduce flooding in parks. 1% will also protect the vulnerable wetlands, again, which are really critical. These natural areas are critical in this changing climate. 1% would allow us to protect our urban forests, adding more trees that help clean the air and reduce heat. We would have a faster response to the 311 calls regarding trees. A lot of people complain about fallen tree limbs after storms. With more staffing, there can be a better response to those concerns. It'll create opportunities for more cultural and recreational programs for New Yorkers of all ages. And then we also want to make sure that our parks workers who do a valiant job maintaining the parks with the little resources that they have, we want to make sure that, you know, this can be improved safety conditions for them. We all know, everyone who's been to a park, that there's public health benefits, there's mental health benefits. And so when we look at parks nationally, the data shows us that, you know, it's over $1 billion. People who regularly visit parks, they have better health improvements by walking, being active, being social, and, you know, breathing cleaner, healthier air. So it contributes to over $1 billion in annual reduction in healthcare costs. It also, again, as I mentioned about stormwater, it's really critical in this changing climate to make sure that our parks can divert stormwater and it can capture carbon, which is part of the challenges of our climate change. And overall, nationally, parks add $17 billion in revenue through tourism and $600 million of recreational spending annually in parks. But we know how important our parks are in New York City, not just nationally. And Mayor Adams, who had, as borough president of Brooklyn, been a big supporter and champion of parks, ran on this campaign. He committed to dedicating 1% of the city budget to parks. He's tweeted about our campaign. He's talked about it on the campaign trail. He's talked about it as mayor. And he said that parks aren't a luxury, it's a necessity. And we all know that. Parks were critical for us during COVID, and parks are also critical for us right now during this migrant crisis. You know, the city is using some of our city parks to house migrants. And so we want to make sure that our parks are being adequately funded to maintain and support New York City through these growing crises. Mayor Adams also said that he wants to get to 1% by the end of his term. And so we need to push him to make sure that he is making the right investments. 1% would mean an additional $300 million in a city budget that is $107 billion. So we're not making a huge ask, it's a drop in the bucket. We just need to make sure that even in spite of this fiscal crisis, that the city is making the right investments, and parks are really critical right now during this climate crisis. We have 44 council members who have signed on to support our 1%, our call for 1% of the city budget. The council members who are not listed have not opposed, they just have not gotten back to us as of today, whether or not they are formally supporting 1% of the city budget. So we have right now, this should be updated, over 12,000 New Yorkers have signed our petition calling for 1% of the city budget. I will follow up with an email that has the PowerPoint, the links in Spanish and English to the petition, and the links to a letter that you can send to the mayor in Spanish and English, you know, asking him to not make any additional cuts to the Parks Department. And so those are some of the ways that your community board can support us. We're going to have a rally in the spring, so we'll follow up with you and hope that representatives from your community can support our call for 1%. But today we're asking for a letter of support from your community board on 1% for parks. So that's the end of my presentation. I'll take questions if there are any questions.
I have one question. Other than the city, are you funded by any other outside people or agencies?
So New Yorkers for Parks is an independent nonprofit. So we get funding from grants and fundraising for us. As for the city's park department, they have had funding. There's opportunities and they've applied for funding from the state and the federal government to help subsidize some of these costs. And I'm really glad you asked that question because this is a really important point to make. During COVID, there was federal funds that came in that the Parks Department that New York City was able to use to help support our parks. And with that federal funding, they had a program called the Cleaning Corps, which had 1,300 workers to help clean and maintain the parks because of the dramatic increase in park usage. Last year, those federal funds dried up, so the Parks Department lost those 1,300 parks workers. And so we need to make sure that we can get funding for the department so that they can continue to hire more staff that can do the maintenance and operations.
Question?
Thank you.
You
Question?
mentioned about the migrants being in the parks and stuff like that. So wouldn't the money of that come from like the state or the government instead of just the city?
Well, that's the hope, and that's what the mayor and city council members are asking the federal government for funds to support the migrant crisis. But right now, the Parks Department needs resources to be able to clean the parks. For example, there's about 3,000 people in Randall's Island, so they need to make sure that they're able to clean and maintain the parks, the bathrooms, and all of the resources and amenities that are in the parks.
I have a question.
Just a moment, George. We're not to the public yet. We're still on committee members.
All right, sure.
Roger, do you have any questions?
Had a question about the 1% on how you make sure that continues on to like years coming up, not just like currently 1%, but into the future. Would that be different laws or?
It's not a law, it's an ongoing fight. We have to continue to push the city council to make sure that they're funding the Parks Department. Every year, the city budget is done it has to be completed by June 30th by the city charter. And so all of the advocacy groups, for various issues are, lobbying the city council to make sure that their area of issues are covered in the budget. And so we do this every year. This is a year-round job for us to advocate for the city, for the Parks Department. And so we have to continue to push and make sure that we can get the funding. What the mayor has said he would do is increase the Parks Department's budget over the course of his tenure so that by the end of his tenure, it will get 1%. We've had some increases in the Parks Department budget since 2021, but we need to keep building on those successes.
What's your goal? Your dollar goal or percentage goal rather?
The 1% is our goal, and it's the minimum because that's the minimum to allow our Parks Department to be able to maintain the parks in really great ways. Right now, for example, the Parks Department they don't have static maintenance people. So how they operate is they don't have maintenance people assigned at specific parks. They have what they call a mobile cleaning crew. So they travel around to the communities in different boroughs and they clean the parks. So they spend a lot of time sitting in traffic, driving from park to park because there's not enough staff to just clean the parks. For example, another really critical job at the Parks Department is the PEP officers. They're uniformed officers. They don't carry a weapon. They're essentially New York State peace officers. And so in Harlem, for example, they have 4 PEP officers that work between 4 parks: Marcus Garvey Park, Jackie Robinson Park, St. Nicholas Park, and Morningside Park. And so if something happens in Jackie Robinson Park and they have to call the PEP officers and they're in Marcus Garvey Park, they have to go all the way across from East Harlem to West Harlem to respond. And that's just not an adequate way to work because there's not enough staffing. So we really need to make sure that the Parks Department is adequately staffed.
On repairs. Is this the reason why the Parks Department is pretty slow in making repairs, let's say to the benches, to the bathrooms? What would you need to bring that up to stuff?
So it's 2 things. One is the lack of staffing. The other thing is some of the repairs are done under the capital budget. There's the expense budget for maintenance and operation, and the capital budget is for construction. And so the process to get capital projects done has to go through a whole citywide review. They have to go through bidding processes when they hire contractors. And so that is what delays a lot of the time to get some repairs done.
Okay, thank you.
Dwayne, you have any questions?
I would like to say something in regards to that. So my name is Edward Perez. I'm not on this committee, but I am a member of the Community Board 11. One idea that I think would help you is to reach out to the Parks Committee when we're doing our community needs surveys and assessments, or when we're putting in our budget requests for the year. I believe that the deadlines for those are early October, I think, is it? So, if you reach out to the board, sometime in August, September, with some budget request ideas, especially these capital budget requests, I think that would be a good time for, you to bring this up again as far as asking for, another olive branch, I guess, in order to get the budget requests that you need. Because the community board does have the power to go ahead and do that. And, we're always willing to listen to requests from the community and associations and groups. So I recommend that.
Okay, great. Thank you. It's helpful.
Well, from the Parks Department.
No, she's from New Yorkers for Parks.
Oh, for the Parks.
Sharice.
Okay.
Do you, I know you didn't hear her presentation, but do you have any questions? She's from New Yorkers for Parks. She's fighting for the 1%.
Okay, all right,
She's not Parks Department employee.
okay. I was ready to jump on it.
Do you have any questions or shall I move on to George, who's got his hand raised?
go ahead. Who wanted to?
George, go ahead now.
Thank you. I have 2 unrelated questions. I'm not sure if you're the appropriate person to ask, so I'll ask the question. One is, there's a major capital project underway, which everyone's aware of, involving I-95 and Bruckner Boulevard, restoring that whole complex. And in the area where I-95 crosses Pelham Parkway, a lot of work has been done. New rampways have been put in and so forth. And at least, I'd say a good 7 or 8 major trees, oak, like full oak trees, that type of tree, came down in the last 2 years. I'd like to know what, if any, well, I would expect some mitigations have been done, but are you aware of the mitigations to, compensate for that in terms both of tree planting and money that might go to parks? Because I understand if you can't obviously plant, say, 100 or so trees for one big tree, because that's the equivalency. Usually there's a transformation into a money value that could go to parks budget. Do you know of anything about that? What's happening with that kind of mitigation?
So I do know that Councilmember Joe Borelli has a bill in the city council to require when there is construction, and they have to remove trees, that they have to replace them. The challenge with that is they're not requiring, the bill is not going to require them to replace a tree of the same size. Unfortunately,
Right, no, I understand that. It can only be like a 3-inch tree to seed.
Yeah. but unfortunately, it's gonna take the tree, 25, 30 years to grow to
Right.
that size. But that's one of the bills that's in the city council is, requiring at least them to replace trees when they have to cut them down for construction.
And the other question I have, I don't know if, again, you're involved with this, but I understand a $5.5 million capital project for the plaza area or a plaza in the Mulliner Avenue to, I think, Matthews, and also Seymour Avenue, covering those areas. What exactly is involved there in terms of, again, I'm a tree advocate, I was very involved in the planting and protection of trees during the Pelham Parkway project. What will happen in those areas? Is there going to be removal of trees, alienation of land, turning green land into, cementing it over and putting benches? What exactly is involved with that project?
I'm not familiar with that project, so I haven't seen the plan. I do know that when they do capital projects like that, it has to go through a community review process. So
Well,
George,
There'll be,
she's,
there'll be
George,
a review, there'll be a review.
George,
Yep.
Sharice is not from the Parks Department.
Right, no, I understand,
She's from an organization trying to help
Right,
get for the Parks Department.
right, I thought maybe she or someone else
She
would
cannot
know.
answer those questions that you're asking of
Okay.
her.
Do you know the
And-
answer? Do you know the answer to
Well,
that?
as far as the Bruckner I-95, number one, that's in CB10.
Okay.
So you can ask Matt Cruz or Assemblyman Michael Benedetto. Because I do know they did cut down a lot of trees, but I did see today they got a large shipment of a lot of trees in place that they are now in the midst of replanting over
Right.
there.
Yep.
So
In a day.
yeah, they're gonna be planting trees all week.
And what about the plaza? It's called the Plaza Project, the $5.5 million one involving
Yeah,
Mullen.
that the plaza thing, they're trying to put cement in areas we don't really want cement and take away benches. That kind of is a thorn in our side currently right now.
Right. So in other words, they want to alienate land, and that's
Well, I wouldn't so much say alienate land as the alienation has been going on over in the CB10 area with the Hutchinson River Parkway and the I-95 and all of that stuff. But yes, they are trying to take away some greenage.
that's my
It kind
question.
of would fall under alienation, but not to the extent of some areas. But yeah, we are trying to get that fixed and rectified over here in CB11.
And to my memory, that has to go through the New York State Legislature, right? The green areas are state controlled, unlike the road.
As far as the stuff over with the Bruckner and the Hutch,
Not the Buckner and the Hutch. I mean, Pelham Parkway.
over here, they're just they're trying to take a couple of inches and trying to sweep it under the carpet, basically, and we're not letting them.
Oh, well, that's good to hear. So there's resistance.
Right.
Good. All right, thank you.
Diana, I see you got your hand raised.
Yes, thank you. Hi, Sharice. It's Diana Finch from the Bronx Park East Community Association.
Diana, how are you?
Uh-huh. Good. So we had a meeting last night and we had the petition there and people signed it. But
Great.
I wanted to ask, I had tried in the email that you sent me to copy the link and post it like in our Facebook group and in our emails that we send out, but it didn't work and it kept just defaulting to like my personal signature. I couldn't make it shareable. So I don't know if the new material that you're sending out will just have a link that you can copy and like put in a Facebook post or put it into your own email.
Okay, so I will follow up with you on a shareable link.
Okay, great. Because we just printed out the sheets and
Okay,
the letter and people physically sign the sheets at our meeting. And then I wanted to ask about the numbers that you quoted for the workers,
yes,
the 8,043 workers. Does that include the seasonal workers and the year-round workers?
yes,
Because I know the seasonal workers are all gone now.
yes,
Right.
it includes the seasonal workers. That
So that
includes
8,000, so now we're down to
full list.
way less than 8,000 for the, until like April or May.
Right,
Yeah. Okay. And then on the Pelham Parkway Malls redesign for George, what's happening now is that the Parks Department is redoing the design in response to the feedback that they got from the community when they presented it last spring to the community board and the community. And then they'll be and they heard, very clearly about the benches we wanted to keep, about the paving for the greenway.
Time's up,
So
Diana.
okay, I'm just telling George, they're gonna
Yeah.
Okay,
present
time's
the
up.
redesign, they're gonna present the redesign in January or February
Oh, okay,
for
thank you.
approval all over again. Thank you.
Thanks for letting me know. Thank you.
I'm assuming RD is Roxanne. I see you got your hand raised. RD? RD, you got your hand raised?
Having trouble getting through. The mute.
I'm gonna have to move on.
Well, maybe it'll be corrected, so move on.
Yeah.
if
If
it's
you-
Roxanne Delgado, she can reach out to me directly because we communicate, so.
Okay. Okay.
Photo, no.
All right. Do you have any questions?
No.
Okay.
Hi, is this the gallery session?
No, it's not. It's not the gallery session yet. This was.
I'm sorry, what?
It's not actually the gallery session yet. This was the presentation and questioning with New Yorkers for Parks.
Yes, yes. May I have a half a minute, please? I'll be short.
Yes.
I
Yes.
am the founder of Friends of Pelham Parkway. We've been part of the coalition for New York's for Parks, for Playfair for Parks, of 1% for Parks. I just like to say, I did bring this up to your last meeting. I think other community boards have signed on to this letter. I think we do need to support New Yorkers for Parks to continue the advocacy for our parks, which is much needed for budgeting, funding, especially for enforcement. Every year we're losing a lot of our park land to lack of enforcement, lack of maintenance. We're losing trees, things that cannot be easily replaced. We need our parks because of the air quality gets worse every year. It's the only time we have time during the summer to vacation because a lot of people don't have money to go to the Hamptons or vacation overseas. So for me personally, I think parks is a vital resource for our community in Pelham Parkway. So I ask you please, on behalf of Friends of Pelham Parkway, to sign on to this letter and be part of the coalition for New Yorkers for Parks. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So, yeah, no, well, we want to make a motion to send a letter of support.
Make a motion to send a letter of support for
I second it.
New Yorkers for Parks.
He seconds it.
I second it.
Discuss,
Favor?
discussion.
Discussion.
I think we've
Any
discussed.
discussion?
Yeah.
Any objection?
Anything has been said? Okay, that's fine.
All in favor, it's unanimous.
Yes.
So we're gonna draft a letter to send a letter of support for the 1% for the New Yorkers for Parks
Thank
and the
you.
1%.
Thank you so much. What are the next steps? Will it be go to the community board for a vote, or does it go through your?
Okay.
community?
It'll be going to the full board, what is it, the 30th? Yeah, I believe it's November 30th.
Okay,
Our current location is Einstein. And I say that gingerly. Okay, all right, so I
thank you
guess,
so much, and thank you,
welcome.
Diana, and.
thank you for your
Roxanne.
presentation.
Yeah, Diana and Roxanne are huge supporters of our campaign, so thank you guys.
And thank you for your presentation.
Yeah, thank you so much. Take care.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
Yeah, that's it.
yeah, no, well, actually, before the gallery session, there was the TBD. There was one thing that I did send a couple of weeks ago to Jeremy, but I don't, somehow it got lost and didn't get onto the list. I want to find out if we can get Parks Department to install more and better lighting on Pelham Parkway. In my current bus route this year, I pass Marshalloo Parkway every day. Before the time change, I was on Marshalloo at dark 30. So I was seeing some of their lighting. I could show those in the room here. The particular lighting I'm trying to ask for. It's much lower on the pole. As you see, the regular lamp is up top. The lamp in question that I want is much lower, and it illuminates the area greatly. This just happened to be one that I was at a red light and I was able to catch. But there are tons along Marshalloo Parkway at various areas for the pedestrians. So I want to see, I want to make a motion to have Parks find out about installing more lighting on Pelham Parkway, because it's incredibly dark on Pelham Parkway. Because I also travel that at dark 30. And it's a vast difference between Pelham Parkway and Marshalloo Parkway, and it's so much well lit on Marshalloo. And
Well, maybe we should also look at any crimes that have happened over here on the Parkway that would endanger people, of course. So maybe.
I mean, we shouldn't have to wait for crimes to happen, but I mean, I
Well, it's been
understand.
here for a long time.
Right, I understand. No,
If anything
right.
happened, if we have crimes, then we have a stronger argument.
Right, exactly. I was about to be saying that. Forgot crimes got stronger argument. So yeah, I want to send a letter to Parks Department to see about getting more lighting on Pelham Parkway. Anybody second that?
Second.
Any discussion?
No, I just think we should find out if has been any crime or what kind of crimes that have occurred at night in these areas. Gives us a stronger argument.
Probably other injuries too.
Yeah, injuries, because you can't see where you're walking.
Let's make that, or accidents.
Yeah.
Crimes or accidents that have happened, and we have a stronger argument.
Any objection? Okay, I guess it passes too. Okay, all right, now we're gonna head to the gallery session. I see Roxanne, you still got your hand up, so I'm assuming you want to speak in the gallery? Roxanne, do you want to speak in the gallery? Okay, I'm moving on to George. George, you want to speak in the gallery?
Yeah, I forgot to get the,
Hi, is this the gallery session?
Yes, this is the gallery session.
I'm sorry, Debbie, I'm in a meeting, so I'm going back and forth. May I please speak?
Can I call on you right after George? George started to
Yes, of
speak?
course. Thank you.
Thank you.
I forgot to get the name of the person who was the host.
Sharice? Sharice?
Oh, how do you spell it?
SHERRISE.
S-E. And what's the group she,
NY, the number 4, P. So it's New Yorkers for Parks.
New Yorkers for Parks, right? I just briefly wanted to find out if anybody has any interest in trying to get Pelham Parkway designated as a historical scenic place. I've never been able to really get anything to take like that. And if there's any, any group, including her group or anyone that's interested in that.
I don't know, that's something we can.
This would bring in more money, more protection, more everything.
We can explore and see about. Okay, all right, I'm moving back over to Roxanne.
Thank you, Debbie. I appreciate it. I'd like to ask the Parks Committee again. I think you were the one that mentioned at the last full board meeting that the proposal by Parks was just widening a small section, not the whole section to the end of Stillwell. And that was a good point, because what's the point of widening a small section? It won't address supposedly all the reasoning why they want to widen it. Why not rehab the whole area where there's filled with potholes? And I think the chair of the parks mentioned how there's a school for special education where there's blind children, and it's very hazardous for them as well as residents of Pelham Parkway. I'd like to say thank you for voting twice in support of the community, not to widen, but to rehab the whole pathway. We have to stick with the community of Pelham Parkway. We cannot be just for one person, by one person's opinion. The community has spoken over and over again. We came out in full force in several of your committee meetings, as well as the full board meeting, and time again, they said the same thing: to rehab, to fix all the potholes, repair what needs to be fixed, but there's no need to widen the pathway. And they explained several times their concerns. So I hope the Parks Committee will continue as you have done in the past, and I say that in appreciation, to stick with the committee, with the community, and hopefully we'll win this battle, because this is about preserving Pelham Parkway. And yes, I do think we should be a historic site. That should be a state issue, and hopefully people will contact the Senator Gustavo to see how we can make it a historic site, because we have too much overdevelopment in Pelham Parkway. We're losing our greenery, and that's a concern for me. And I thank you, Parks Committee, for your time, and have a good night.
Thank you. Diana, I see you got your hand raised.
Yes, hi, thanks. So I wanted everyone to know that Kevin Riley is having a tabling in community conversation on parks next Wednesday from 6:30 to 8 p.m. And it's focusing on the parks that are in his district. We're gonna go and have a table for BPECA there. It's gonna be 3757 White Plains Road. So I was very glad to see a council member
Yes.
inviting his whole district to come to a meeting specifically on the parks in his district. Because of course Zimmerman is in his district, so we'll definitely be bringing that up with him. And in terms of lighting, we've had a request for better lighting and the safety call boxes in Bronx Park East around Burke Avenue, which is right near the border with another community board district. It's an area that's kind of cut up in between different precincts, different city council districts, different community board districts. But if we could talk about that, the safety, the lighting there, and also in that area, but on the streets, the residents would
All
like
right.
street lights that are lowered, because the problem is the trees that have been planted there have grown so nicely and thickly
Time,
that they block out the street lights and it
time.
makes it more dangerous. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me see if I can share the picture I was just sharing with the room here.
Yeah, we couldn't see it online.
No, I realize that.
Yeah, thanks.
There you go.
Wait,
You got it?
no. Oh, all right, yeah.
Are
I just
those
wa-
the lights in question?
Very
This
nice.
light-
That's perfect. Thank you.
This is the lighting that this is on Marshalloo and forgot the intersection of this one. But this is the kind of lighting that I'm requesting. You can see that where the regular pole ends, but this is the kind of lighting that I'm wanting, where it's much shorter and yes, under the trees. I'm wanting that on Pelham Parkway, but it sounds like you're also asking for the similar lighting over in Bronx Park.
Yes, perfect. That'd be just perfect. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Do we have any vandalism on these lights that are lower? I think we should find out.
It looks, I mean, it's lower, but it's still high enough that I wouldn't see anybody vandalizing it.
But I'd like to know if
Oh,
there's vandalism.
right, we could, right. I know, it's the cop in you.
Can't believe you.
All right, let me see if I can get back to. All right. Okay. All right, so we're gonna be sending a letter to Parks about the shorter statured lighting, and as per Joe, we want to see if there's any vandals doing anything to the lower lighting. All right, what else? Any old business?
No, okay.
Okay.
Zimmerman. We'd like that, the Zimmerman, park house to be renovated prior to
Right.
the renovation of the entire park. Because I think it would be a disaster
Yeah.
to renovate Zimmerman Playground without a bath.
Exactly.
Maybe we better start comparing Zimmerman Playground and Morris Park Playground.
We did that.
Yeah,
We
We
did that.
did that.
maybe we ought to do it a little bit stronger.
Listen, if I haven't jumped down people's throats and galloped out their guts, I can tell you, we have done this, okay? But it seems as though the Parks Department doesn't listen. And we're gonna have to do a little bit more petitioning and send it to the various elected officials.
Yeah, this is,
This is enough, okay? We've been talking for over 6-7 years with the Parks Department about this park house, and nothing's been done, which means we can't have any programs for the children in the park or on Barco.
Yeah.
Where the PAL used to be. And I think we've done enough talking now. We just have to do a lot more action.
well, I agree with that 100%.
A lot more.
Action gets things done.
Yeah, well, out and they're going to the various elected officials. I was at the Carl's office today. I'll be at someone else's office probably Monday, tomorrow's a holiday. I don't expect, offices to be open, but I'll check. But it's time.
Yes, some offices are open, some offices are closed.
Post office is open, can you imagine?
School's open.
Oh, right. Okay, well, we're working on it, and I'm gonna go to the elected official offices personally. And, move on that.
Okay, it's good, good.
Any new business? New business?
Any old business,
No, I said old business.
let's go home.
All right. The meeting has come to a close at 8:01 PM. Everybody have a good night and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks for joining.
Thank you.